Well, oh my God, welcome to Brook McCarthy,
Thank
to the ADHD Marketer podcast. Now, I've worked with Brooke quite a few times over the years, but Brooke, I asked if you would like to contribute, and can you tell us all about you, but also the topic that we decided would be an awesome one to talk about today?
Yes. So my name is Brook McCarthy. I'm a business coach. Please don't hold that against me. I'm also a business trainer. And I think we've had a long, association. I think you must have come to a Melbourne course, right, originally?
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I've known you and watched you evolve over the years, which is always entertaining and fun. And you're great to follow on social media as well. I teach digital marketing. I teach sales for values-based business owners. I'm a bit of a dinosaur insofar as I've been self-employed for 15 years, hopefully unemployable for the rest of my life, and happily so. And yeah, I think the podcast, the things that we were talking about was how to be consistent when you're anything but. And I think there's this big thing on the internet, like I know certainly one of the themes in the online business space is consistent. You have to be consistent. You have to, blah, blah, blah. How to get organized when you're a disorganized non-planner, that would be me. And I am in a relationship with a guy who is crazy organized. I like to tell him it's a spectrum. Because I take photos of him in the day and send it to my family for a laugh. Like he'll chop the vegetables, he'll put the olive oil and the garlic in the fry pan that hasn't been turned on yet, but he's just prepping. So his idea of when it's appropriate to organize and my idea of when it's appropriate to organize are like, our timelines are completely different.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm sure I don't need to convince you that, it's a good idea to not be a hot mess in business, that, it's harder to get people to trust you and to pay you if, you're a bit of a disorganized mess. So I've kind of created various ways of getting around my non-planning tendencies. Yeah, and then overwhelmed. Like for a lot of us, for a lot of business owners, it's a pretty typical state of affairs to feel, overwhelmed. It's something I hear probably every single day from clients. So yeah.
Mm. And it's almost like one of the things I've been trying to do is simplify. Just keep it simple.
Yep.
All the projects that you're working on this week or this day or this month, whatever.
Yeah.
Being able to take action at the right time, get things done. Obviously, that helps with consistency because obviously that's kryptonite for somebody like me. But I think if we think about what other tactics that you've used, are they app-based? Is it just a habit? Like, what are the things that you have implemented that really work for someone who, like you were saying, is kind of a non-planner and we just, like, I just know what I've got to do half the time. But then, of course, there's loads of time where there's no way that I'm working on the priority tasks. I know I'm not. So I've always got to go back and double, triple, quadruple check. My to-do list, which is a bit annoying and takes heaps of time. But tell us about your approach then to planning.
Look, how long have you got? I have so many different strategies and different tactics. They're probably more tactics than strategies over the years that I've kind of developed, and I don't even really think about them. They've kind of become habitual. Some of them were developed when I had tiny children. So as I'm sure you remember, or maybe you don't, maybe you've blocked it out. It's like chaos. It's just like, and your brain is, in 1,000 different places. And at the time, I had a digital marketing agency. So I was offering website design services, SEO services, copywriting services, email marketing, like a whole bunch of stuff, and trying to keep up with what was what and who was, who was doing what project and where were we up to. And, with a toddler and a baby was just hell on earth. Yeah. So one of the really simple things I did was I would leave physical clues for myself. I would walk, and I still do this to this day. I would walk into a room or out of a room, and I would leave something that I wanted to remember. So let's say it's a pair of shoes. I put the pair of shoes right in the middle of the floor, so you can't avoid but see the pair of shoes when you're walking out the room. Or I'd walk into the room and I'd say hairbrush, I don't know, I'd name 3 activities that I was going to do so that I could kind of keep some sense of order in my brain. And I still do that to an extent. So I'll do that in my diary. I write everything down. I think we make life a lot harder than it needs to be by thinking, oh yes, I'll just, remember that. I'll just put that in my brain and I'll remember that. Why? My mother always has a go and says, why don't you ever know what's going on? Why do you never know what's happening on Friday? I'm like, because it's in the diary. It's in the electronic calendar. I don't need to remember that anymore. And even if, like, I'm going for dinner tonight and I've invited various friends from various places to come together, and so I've written in the calendar the names of those people, because if I just left it into my head, I get a text message at 6 p.m. from a girlfriend saying, oh, so where are we meeting?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? So by having that kind of written in the electronic diary, I can kind of keep on top of stuff. So I do that with visual clues, visual cues as well. With the web browser, like, I set certain web browsers up, which I know can turn out to be 50 open tabs. But, things like that can kind of help you when you're feeling like there's 25,000 things to do.
I like that. I really like that. I do the 3 things. So part of what I discovered about myself is that I rehearse a lot of things in my head over a period of time. So let's say I was thinking about a particular interview podcast with somebody else later this afternoon, and I found that I was actually talking about it like I was actually on the podcast when I'm trying to go to sleep. I think that's a bit more of an anxiety thing than a useful thing. But the 3 things, I used to use that all the time. So I'd go to bed saying Brooke, Rochelle, so-and-so, Brooke, Michelle, Uma, Brooke, Michelle, Uma, Brooke, Michelle. So I know in the morning, these are the 3 clients that need my attention, and that I can't forget that they're the 3, even though it's in my calendar and it's bloody blah. It's not like I'm not already putting things in other places, but it really means that I am faster at then taking action because I remember they're the 3. So it's really interesting that you do that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, 100%. And, like, back to the writing stuff down thing, it is good for your brain to write things down. It is also really good for your brain to reduce the amount of stimulus that you're taking on. And I think a lot of business owners actually take on way too much stimulus. They're looking at way too much of other people's marketing, spending, way too much time and attention worrying about other people's businesses instead of thinking about themselves and thinking about their own business and focusing on their own set of priorities. So, another key thing that I do is at the beginning of the week, and I'm not the type A person who's organizing the next week on the Friday or organizing the week ahead on the Sunday. I'm not that person. But Monday, I'm looking at the week and I'm going, okay, well, what are the top 3 tasks that I need to cross off the list this morning? No, not this morning, but this week. And then I try and front load the week. So to prioritize the most valuable business development, future focused tasks on a Monday. And if it doesn't get done on a Monday, it gets done on a Tuesday. And if it doesn't get done on a Tuesday, it gets done on a Wednesday. And things like, there's this week, I had a list of follow-ups I needed to do because I haven't been following up very well. So I opened up my spreadsheet. I pulled out, oh shit, a month ago I sent a proposal and I haven't followed up. And I prioritized that at the beginning of the week. So now it's Thursday and, I've had some success. I've had some momentum, people have responded and said yes, or no, or whatever, like things have happened. Whereas if I'd kind of thought on a Thursday afternoon, oh, what should I, what's important to do? well, it's too easy to kind of, then it's Friday and nobody wants to do anything important on a Friday, and certainly not on a Friday afternoon.
Mm.
So I think front loading the week works really well, and front loading the day also works really well, because then you can kind of, if it's 3 p.m. and your brain dead and the sun's shining and you walk away from work for the day, it's not a big deal. You've already put in 4 solid hours or 6 solid hours, and that's more than enough.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that. And even though I was, fighting against the time blocking or whatever, and I have had this conversation with a couple of people that when they say, oh, do the important stuff, when you're the most focused. I'm like, well, I don't always know when that's going to be. But actually, the more I've been really paying attention, that is in fact not true. That I've started doing the things that distract me the most or that I'm procrastinating about. So
Yeah.
they're on my mind that, oh, you still haven't done that thing, you still haven't done that. They're the things I get done first, which usually happens to be client sort of work where there's a few steps in a project and I'm like, just go and do it. And I
Yeah.
keep saying, you're going to feel amazing when this is done.
Yeah.
You're going to feel
Yeah.
amazing when this is done.
Right. Yeah.
And so I kind of give myself that, if it doesn't feel good to do the task, it's really hard to do the task. But if I keep saying, oh, imagine how great you're going to feel when this is done, go and do it. You're going to feel amazing. That's really, really helped. So I do try and I look at my week now and I say the first 2 hours of the day,
Yeah.
I was giving them to client, not work, but actual Zoom meetings with clients.
Yeah.
But actually I don't need to do that first thing in the morning because I love that stuff. I can do that in the afternoon. So now I've said, don't do workshops in the morning.
Yeah.
Do the actual focus work that I do without someone with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Do in the morning because that's the stuff I don't necessarily want to do.
Yeah.
So that in itself is planning. Like that's still me saying plan your day around the projects that matter.
Yeah.
And looking, like we've said, put those visual cues in place. Give yourself other ways to remind yourself about what's important this week. Front load the week and the day with the things that are really going to make a difference to, like if I get that client work done, well then I've got more space to do more client stuff. So it's not just that there might be another invoice after that. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't.
Yeah.
But I think that that has certainly been working for me lately. And you actually introduced me to Pomodoro a million years ago.
Yeah.
I don't really use Pomodoro like that anymore. I think for me, I've got like about 45 minutes and I can really, I've turned off all my notifications. Because I've got 4 devices on my desk. Like, what the hell?
4 devices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got my laptop, my iMac, my iPad, and like, what am I doing? So that's been really important change that I've made recently is turning off all the notifications.
Right.
Everything's on do not disturb except here where I am kind of thing. That's really made a difference.
It's amazing how many people still have their notifications. We all know, oh, yes, good idea. Yes, we all nod along. Yes, great. Amazing how many people still get notified. Somebody's liked your picture on Instagram. Like, who gives a flying toss about that?
I know.
You need to be notified. Like, what are you doing? You're hijacking your focus.
So all I want to be reminded of,
Mm.
because I've started, I'm going to have a whole podcast episode about how to really outsource the stuff that you clearly do not want to do and you're not going to do it and you're going to forget all these important things. So I had someone set up Asana projects for me. So I literally just have to look at one project at a time. Oh my God, it's so amazing. So when I went in to, now I can't remember what I was going to tell you that. The planning, the stuff that I know I'm going to forget, I'm automating as much of that as I can. But if you think about all I want to know in my notifications, that was the point, is the tasks I have a deadline for today.
Yeah.
And calendar notifications. So I'm trying to really make it, these are the only things that really matter.
Yeah.
Don't forget that, because like if you can get a reminder for that stuff, do it. But are there any other ways that we can prioritize in that planning as well? Like how do you actually prioritize?
Yes. Well, thank you for asking. I actually developed a tool inside of my Hustle and Heart program because for years I was wondering, okay, well, this is something I've thought about a lot over the years, is how do you actually prioritize time? How do you decide, okay, well, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that? And I think for a lot of business owners, like 80–90% of business owners, we prioritize paid client work. In other words, we allow somebody else to dictate where our focus is. And, people tell me all the time, every day, it's very important that this client work gets done because that's how I get paid. And I'm like, yes, I get that. I get that. You need to be paid. Understood. But that never ends, right? And what you're doing when you're constantly prioritizing client work, you're doing a few things. Number one, you're kind of at the mercy of other people. So if business is booming, great. If people are, buying, fabulous. But if they're not buying, then you're like, shit, I probably should have done some marketing and business development. But the other thing that you're kind of coaching or training yourself in is that to expect that I'm going to get a dopamine hit when I do something for somebody else. So I'm going to act this way. I'm going to please this person in order to get paid and please the client, and then I'll feel good about myself. And that is really common and ultimately not where I want to end up. I want to divorce my self-worth from my productivity. I want to divorce my time from my money. I want to get paid for my ideas rather than my output. So I think this kind of learning how to make smart decisions is kind of pivotal to being a business owner, regardless of what you do, regardless of what industry you're in. And I made a decision-making matrix on how to make those decisions quicker. But also, if you do have 20 minutes or 15 minutes or 5 minutes, all the time, every single day, especially on those days I'm feeling scatty. If I'm having one of those days where, I'm just like, I'm all over the shop, I can't focus, I'm just like, and the to-do list is getting longer and I'm overwhelmed and I'm starting to feel a bit panicky, I'll get up, walk away from the desk, take a minute to get a glass of water or whatever, and I'll say to myself out loud, what is the most valuable thing you can do in the next 15 minutes? Like, next 5 minutes, what is the most valuable task you can get done in the next 5 minutes? And it's almost always not paid client work.
How interesting.
Yeah. So,
and I like that about it's, you were saying two things: the removing your self-worth from productivity. So I want to come back to that, because ultimately planning is because we want to get more done in less time. Like, that's the whole point of having a plan. But also the having control over doing work that makes me feel fabulous.
Yeah.
Not necessarily connecting that to client feedback, because what happened to me last week was that I got terrible client feedback for the first time in years.
Yeah.
And like that threw me off for days. And even though I know he didn't do the work, like, I went back over the plan that I'd created with him and all the ideas I gave him, he didn't action the plan. So it actually wasn't about me, it was about, but it's still expecting that kind of positive result. Feeling good because of that is actually a terrible way for me to work.
Because that costs you money, right? That bad mood costs you peace of mind and money, and peace of mind is more expensive. Like, to go into that tailspin of, oh shit, like, we want to avoid that, right? We want to minimize that.
So that's interesting, because then no, hang on. Do take a learning out of it if there is one. And it was really about simplifying the plan, and that he's not a good fit just because of his potentially just his literacy around social media or whatever. But the choice of I get to choose what I do to feel good, and I shouldn't link it to another person, is a really huge learning that you've just dropped there for me, and no doubt for others. But do you want to go back to the productivity and the self-worth?
Yeah. I've got a question for you. What do you think? This is just a working theory. It's not based on any research or evidence, but what do you think about the dopamine hit that, because we're not all the same, right? That much is obvious. We're not all the same. Our brains aren't the same. Some people don't seem to need the dopamine hit, and some people, and I put myself in that category, go out of our way as thrill seekers to have as many dopamine hits as possible.
Mm.
And, you know, it's invariable that we use our business for those dopamine hits, right? We receive cash, we feel great about ourselves. We receive positive feedback from clients, we feel good about ourselves. We launch something new, we feel good. You know, we put something on social media and it gets a good response, we feel good. And I think that's really common. I don't think it's necessarily healthy, but, you know, well, not healthy, it's not ideal.
Mm.
But what do you think? Do you think that that some brains need more dopamine hits than others?
So at the risk of sounding like I'm trying to educate anyone about ADHD, because I'm not, and I say that at the beginning of the intro to this podcast. That's not an education podcast about that, because that can't be, because I'm just not that expert. But there's evidence that shows that the creation of dopamine in an ADHD wired brain doesn't really work. So you manufacture ways to get it. Whereas the people who seemingly don't need it are getting it. It's just that it happens for them in different ways, and they don't have to seek it out.
Right.
So if we need to manufacture it, which we do, because it's giving us positive reinforcement that this task is good and you should do this again, is that we have to find ways to build in that feel-good factor for things that we don't necessarily want to do. And that's why we're talking about planning and productivity, right? But that's why I say to myself, how amazing are you going to feel when you get this done? You're going to feel amazing.
Yes, I love that.
And
I love that.
And this came from a coach, Rochelle Bright, who we're talking about. Well, he's on the podcast too.
Great.
The other thing about it is saying, okay, when I finish this task and I broke it down into tiny, tiny pieces to make myself do it, let's say, I have, I'm going to be able to play on Canva and create a new model, because I'm obsessed with creating models to make things easier to understand. Right?
Yeah.
Now, that's not necessarily related to a particular client or a blog or anything. It's just I'm trying to get this out of my head onto a piece of paper, onto Canva. I get to do that at 12 o'clock when I finish this other. So we do need dopamine to repeat tasks that we need to repeat. Like I think that's just every human.
Yeah.
But we need to manufacture it a little bit. And how can you do that in really simple ways? Like you said, I get up and I stand up and I go for a walk, or I do, you know, you might do yoga because you love it or whatever. Yeah. And for me, that's, hey, you get to create a new thing if you feel like it right now.
Yeah.
You've done this other thing. So it is really important. And they say that when we are completely unfettered, right, that's one of the reasons why I think some people with ADHD seek out riskier behavior, because they start to get, now I don't know that for sure, please don't quote me as an expert, anybody that's listening, dear listener. It's just that you can see that would be possible. Whereas I'm finding other really amazing ways, like this is so bizarre, cleaned my windows and the windowsills, and if I open these blinds and I can see all the green across the road, it just makes me feel so much better. I'm like, well, work with that open all the time then.
Yes.
But then it ceases to be as exciting. So now I just do it when I really want a spark of creativity, or I want to feel a different level of energy or whatever. I open the blind because I know how good it looks. It's really weird. But I think that you're absolutely spot on, that some people are more aware of it and trying to manufacture it, and other people just don't need to do that.
Yeah. And I see that in that tendency that business owners have of razoring their business to the ground. I see this over and over again. Over the last 15 years, the amount of clients have had to talk away from the ledge, where they're just like, I'll just delete my email list, I'll start a new social media, like I'm just going to razor all to the ground. And it's this kind of, because we get adrenaline from that, right? It gives this sense of, oh my God, and the newness of something that's completely, you know, new. I'm going to start again, new business, new brand, new website, you know.
Yeah.
And I understand where that drive comes from, but it's really not good for your nervous system over the long term, and it's certainly not good for your bank balance.
No.
So, you know, as much as possible. And again, with the dopamine hits and the risk-taking behavior, you know, like if you can just look for risks in other places, or not risks, but adrenaline activity feel good activities. That's why as a business coach, I'm often, like I've got one client who works like a Trojan. She sits at her desk for 10 hours a day. She's making excellent money. Like everything's going swimmingly. My homework for her is like, book that convertible ride, that you always wanted to have. Like go and enroll in that pottery class that you've been talking about doing. Like join that boot camp, beach boot camp, because that's really important for a variety of purposes, including, get your dopamine hits elsewhere, get your adrenaline rush elsewhere. Don't burn your business to the ground because, you want that kind of, that hit. Yeah.
Such a good point, because let's say, and I have literally, I've done it however many times, and lots of entrepreneurs and creative people have been diagnosed with ADHD. It's not surprising. It's just that when I look back at all the failure to launch experiences I've had for me, it's because the process of creating it and coming up with it is really exciting. The launch, that's not exciting. And so you've got to get somebody else to do that for you, or you've got to find, another way around it. But it's also, I'm like, oh, I'm throwing it all out. There's a real all or nothing kind of mentality. And now that I feel a lot clearer, and the clarity of what I'm trying to achieve is so much better than it was 12 months ago, that I can say, hey, they were really amazing ideas.
Yeah.
Go back, actually. Now that I know that I could outsource a great deal of the setup of that product, that program, and just literally be the talent that turns up and does the thing, and then I don't have to do anything else. Like, that's my dream.
Yeah.
I feel like that's been such a huge learning, that you don't have to burn it all to the ground and start again. The successful entrepreneurs that have ADHD, I'll tell you who they are: Denise Duffield Thomas, Leonie Dawson. They have teams of people around them that do the stuff that is not their jam. They also have played to their strengths. And they have allowed that creativity and play in totally other ways. So they're not breaking the thing that was working because they think that's the only way they're going to feel better. And so you're spot on, because I was saying that one of the reasons why I think we're good at creating ideas and coming up with things and not launching anything or following through is because the process of creation is just so rewarding. And so don't stop doing that. It's just that the follow through someone else can do. That's what I'm
and also I think for a lot of business owners, like I have been doing a songwriting course, a short songwriting course at the Sydney Conservatorium. I am shit. I am shockingly shit, and I am so out of my depth, and it is so difficult, and the teacher's amazing, but she's speaking a completely different language. I don't understand what she's talking about half the time. And it kind of reminds me of how much we fear difficulty and how much we fear, the process of learning is fraught with difficulty. And, she said something that really, like, as a trainer, it just went straight to my heart. She said, if it's not difficult, you're not learning, you're just rehearsing. Like that is bang on for me. Because there's a lot of times where I think, oh, yeah, I'm learning a new skill. I'm learning about Google Analytics. I'm learning about whatever. But I'm not really challenging myself. I'm in my comfort zone. I'm just kind of rehearsing. I'm adding incremental information, but not really out of my depth information. And I think if we can follow our curiosity and get comfortable in that discomfort that we so frequently feel as business owners, there is so... I don't know any other role where you are just regularly, it's part of being a business owner is to be out of your depth, to be learning on the run, to have this immense learning curve in the first 18 months in particular, but it never ends. And when okay, I'm better at this now, or, bad client feedback doesn't throw me so much anymore, there's another one and another thing and another thing. It just never ends. Like it changes or evolves, So I think kind of changing our relationship with what is difficult. And, I know that my tendency is when, this is where procrastination comes from, right? Is we feel uncomfortable and then we distract ourselves with procrastination. So when I feel like things are getting dense or complex or abstract or difficult, then I'm on Instagram or I'm hunting for a podcast. Yeah.
Mm. That's such a great statement. If it's not difficult, it's not learning.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that will be listening are lifelong learners, because we feel we sort of, it's hardwired. We want to improve. We want to get better. We want to, and so if it's not difficult, it's not learning. That's really, really powerful statement.
Yeah.
We don't just procrastinate because something is difficult.
Yeah.
There's also that sort of executive sort of function thing around, well, it's just not interesting, so I'm not going to do it. So we procrastinate because it is literally just not interesting or novel enough for us to want to. So that's that piece about breaking it up to either manufacture it to be interesting somehow. I don't know how, but there's always ways around it. But if you're procrastinating because something is difficult, I heard listened to a webinar mid last year from Attitude, who do a lot of ADHD sort of education-y stuff. And it was this amazing webinar about procrastinating, and that underneath pretty much every time we procrastinate, there's a level of ambiguity about what is actually the next step.
Yes.
And he suggested that so much of this is about self-awareness, isn't it? Yeah. When you find yourself procrastinating, so even if you've written a plan and you're still not even doing the thing, he says to ask in that moment, what is difficult here?
Yes.
What is hard about this thing that I don't want to do it?
Yes.
I remember having this conversation with you a gazillion years ago, like 6 years ago probably, where I didn't want to make phone calls.
Right.
And and you said, stepping out of your comfort zone and doing something difficult doesn't mean you're going to do it 8 hours for the day, Jenny. It's like 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking, is that you do that thing, and it'll probably take you 5 minutes. And I was like, yeah, why do we have this notion that it's going to be difficult all the time? And that's not true.
Yeah. I tell you what, I'm opening the doors to my Life's a Pitch challenge, which is all about that, which is all about introducing yourself to strangers and, having kind of forging new relationships and things. And most people would rather chew broken glass, including extroverts, including social people. But yeah, I mean, it literally is 2 minutes, 5 minutes, at the most 10 minutes of discomfort or ambiguity. And the potential payoff and reward is zero.
Yeah.
You know?
And we can't get better at sales and marketing, which is the whole premise of this podcast, really, if we're not doing some difficult or uncomfortable things. And I know that I was very anti, don't try and make me step into out of a comfort zone when I feel uncomfortable 24 hours a day already. So I wasn't in the headspace to be able to do that because so many other shitty things were going on. Whereas now I'm like, I could do that difficult thing for 5 minutes. I'm going to feel amazing after I've done that thing. So Life's a Pitch. You might as well tell us about that, because I can't remember.
Yeah. So Life's a Pitch, I think I created it in the middle of COVID, actually. Because I lost, when, like a lot of people, I think I had about $30,000 worth of business that just went out the window, the face-to-face training when COVID happened. So I was like, okay, well, how am I going to get this back? And, one of the things I did was send a couple of emails, and, it was literally no more than a handful of emails, 2, 3, 4 emails perhaps. And it resulted in, one of them turned into a $12,000 job. And there was, it's just, for me, it's something I've done since day dot, since the time I opened my doors. I always did marketing pretty much because I was a marketer and I knew the value of it. But, I'm not adverse to introducing myself to strangers. Of course I feel awkward. Of course I feel self-conscious. Of course I want them to like me and all the rest of it. I'm not a sociopath. So life's a pitch is really about creating your own opportunities. It's about not waiting. It's about amping up your courage and going after what you want. And that could be paying clients, but it doesn't have to be. It like pitching yourself to a podcast, for example. People email me, your clients ask me all the time, how do I get on a podcast? I'm like, well, have you pitched? And they're like, well, how do I do that? And it's like, there is literally be a guest on our podcast. Like it ain't difficult. But, for a lot of people, it provokes a lot of angst. It provokes a lot of overthinking. And, people have bad pictures all day long. I delete about 5 or 6 a day from my inbox without reading them really. So it's done poorly all the time. But there is a way of doing it that is natural and human and, quite effortless. So the Life's a Pitch Challenge includes the pitch scripts to actually go ahead and send those emails.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And it's happening very shortly. So
I think if you've got a link, I'll chuck it in the show notes as well. But also, Brooke, if this doesn't get published, I'll share it anyway. Just give me the link.
Right.
But one of the things I wanted to raise there is that a lot of the procrastination, we've written a plan, we've put all these tactics in place, and we still find we're not doing the thing, and we investigate personally, why am I procrastinating about this thing? Why am I doing this thing? A lot of it comes down to being nervous about being criticized, right? So, excuse me, I know that for me was a really big, well, if I don't try too hard, nobody's going to say anything horrible to me, so I won't do the thing. So as part of the pitch, do you sort of talk about, and if you get inverted commas rejected, then this is how you kind of frame that for yourself, that you're always closer to a yes. There's no doubt about that. The more action you take, the closer you are to getting the pitch right or improving it or whatever. But do you talk about sort of rejection or that feedback if your pitch isn't going to work?
Yeah, so 9 times out of 10 you'll be ghosted. Most people, for some dumb reason, don't respond. And
that's weird, isn't it?
I would love to. I should probably create a course on etiquette. I don't know if anybody's interested, but
well, the people that need it wouldn't do it.
Exactly. Like you're spot on there. The people that need it wouldn't do it, and the people that don't need it will be the first to sign up because they're like, oh, I don't want to offend anyone. Actually, you've got the opposite problem. You're playing it way too safe. No one knows you exist. You're waiting to be chosen. You're waiting for somebody to tap you on the shoulder and say, you're ready. You're the one that has to choose yourself. You're the one that has to, no one's going to back you if you don't back yourself. So like for clients, I give clients homework to actually seek rejections and what I like one homework assignment to particular clients, not all clients, but particular clients who are on that growth trajectory and where I'm coaching them and training them on sales and pitching specifically. I'll send them to Officeworks to go and buy a big piece of cardboard and some gold stars, and they'll put the chart up in the office. And they're looking for 50 gold star rejections.
Wow.
I want the rejection. I want the no. I'm looking for the no. And I do that with sales as well. Like I will push people for a no because I want that clarity. I want you to say, thanks, but no thanks. Not at this time. I'm not going to go ahead. I want that clarity because otherwise, the two of us are leaving this energy leak that's not good for either of us. It's actually really good for you to have clarity. It's good for all of us to have clarity of it's a yes, it's a no, it's a not at this time, but can I check back in a month or 6 months? Yes, please go ahead. That'd be great. But I think the thing with, you were talking about criticism and rejection. I think the thing is that most of us, or not most of us, let me start again. I can't speak for most of us. A lot of business owners derive, and this goes back to the dopamine, derive way too much of their self-worth and self-esteem from their productivity and from the approval of clients and from the accolades and the testimonials and the positive feedback, even from fucking social media. I don't know if this is a swearing podcast.
Oh, yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Whoops. I think a lot of us go onto social media, we get that dopamine hit, But if we were honest, a lot of us are deriving our self-esteem from social media as well, which is only ever going to end in tears. And we know that objectively, we know that rationally, but we still go seeking it, that positive reinforcement. And I think that when I feel really wobbly and I feel like I can't even trust the ground under my feet, and I certainly can't trust my own opinion of myself, there are probably 5 or 6 individuals in my life that I will go to. And if those 5 or 6 individuals think I'm okay, I'm okay. And everybody else is not actually that important.
Yeah.
Because if somebody turns down a pitch, if somebody says, oh no, I'm not interested in meeting for coffee, oh no, I'm not interested in, whatever you're selling me, no, I'm not interested in getting to know you, it doesn't mean they don't know who you are.
Yeah, that's right.
They're
Yeah.
lost. An attitude I'm trying to take is it's your fucking loss. Like you saying no, like, do you realize how awesome I am?
Yeah, do you even know who you're saying no to? What is the matter with you? Do you think that's like a habit, like a muscle?
Definitely a muscle. Definitely a muscle. Absolutely. And like this is one of the reasons I'm such a fan of coaching and why I'm a coach, is I can see it in my own personality. I can see the effect of me self-coaching myself and how I've changed or evolved. Now, the nature versus nurture, debate is ongoing, but I can see my progress, and therefore I know that this shit works. And that includes that kind of cultivating that attitude of, you know what, like all of this stuff is superficial. You don't know me. Those 5 or 6 individuals, they know me. They know me really, really well. If somebody's rejecting me or ghosting me, it doesn't mean anything. We don't have to create that negative meaning, because there's there's the event, there's the story we create from the event, and then there's the meaning we derive from that story. And most business owners, because of our negativity bias, will go straight to, that person hates me, that person's judging me, they don't think I'm very good, they think I'm really average. Okay, well, I'll say to a client, give me 10 alternatives, and they'll go, huh? And then I'll start listing them off. Their child is sick, their car is in the mechanics, they got your name mixed up with another individual, they forgot all about it, their email system was down. Like, give me 10 alternative possibilities that could well be true, and way more likely than, they hate me and they're plotting my demise right now.
That is a really powerful note to end on, because we are talking about that exact topic about emotions and thoughts and the stories that we choose or don't choose, because we can control what story we tell ourselves. And so, I love that you've brought that up, because that is something that we are going to talk about a little bit more. And I'm sure you've got quite a bit of content on your website about a lot of these topics. So if people want to go and find more gold from Brook McCarthy, your website link is in the description and the show notes and so forth. I'm so pleased that you're here. Thanks, Brook. That's been awesome.
You're most welcome. I feel like we could have talked for hours. There's so many things that, dropped out of this conversation.
No, it's great. It's been great to have you here, and I no doubt we'll talk to you again about a multitude of other topics as well.
Excellent.